When you think of the Arizona frontier, images of cowboys, wagons, and mountains come to mind. Western films rose in popularity during the early 20th century and really hit their peak in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s. Classic heroes like John Wayne, James Stewart, and Clint Eastwood rose to fame for playing the American cowboy in the western states, such as Arizona. A large aspect of these films was the portrayal of the American Indian, including the Navajo tribe, which called Arizona home. They were often portrayed as aggressive, violent, and sometimes even magical. This led to a misconception of who Native Americans are and where they really came from. When looking at Arizona, the first inhabitants were indigenous hunters and gatherers, unknown as to where they came from or where they are today. The first known group civilization in Arizona were the Hopi Native Americans in the 12th century. They migrated from Mexico, South America, and Central America, and are believed to be the ancestors of the Aztecs. The Hopi tribe also has a village known as Oraibi that historians believe is the oldest continual habitat in America. They did not leave as many records from this time period, but one thing they strongly believed in was that people should be living in harmony with nature. Around 100 years later, a group of southern Athabascans migrated west from Texas and Oklahoma to Arizona. This new tribe set up homes between the four sacred mountains: Blanca Peak, Hesperus Peak, Mount Taylor, and San Francisco Peak. That was the mountain that tribe took over, known then as the Diné, and today known as the Navajo tribe. These mountains surrounded Utah, Colorado, Arizona, and New Mexico, also known as the Four Corners. Over time, more tribes migrated to the area, and the Navajo formed a relationship with the Pueblo people, whom they traded with and taught them new ways to live. Up until this point, Navajos had relied on hunting and gathering for food, so the Pueblos introduced dryland farming methods to them. This involves preserving soil moisture in areas of low precipitation and maximizing it over a long period of time. One of the biggest parts of the Navajos' development was their work with turquoise. Native Americans have mined and used minerals in their lives as far back as records go, and this particular stone is found in Arizona. Many in the Navajo tribe believe turquoise to be enchanted due to its color-changing properties. Common products they made were najas and conchas. These necklaces and belts were a few of the many clothing accessories made with turquoise the Navajo wore. To this day, they still produce a lot of pieces with this material, and many families have businesses in the state of Arizona. This long-standing tradition has maintained over the years, as sale of the product and other jewelry is a symbol strongly associated with the Navajo. During the 19th century, the Navajo felt increasing pressure and authority looming over them as the United States government began restricting the rights of Native Americans, like with the Trail of Tears, which took around 100,000 of them from their homes and moved them east to be Americanized. The territory of Arizona had not been purchased by America yet, so those affected were from Texas, Oklahoma, Mississippi, Tennessee, and Alabama. They were taken to eastern states and towns, including right here in Carlisle. Arizona had been owned by Mexico until the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo was signed due to the American victory in the Mexican-American War. The U.S. gained 525,000 miles of land in the southwest, which spelled out doom for the people here. More and more white settlers began migrating to the area, leading to conflict, oftentimes violent. The Navajo conducted raids for food and livestock that often resulted in bloodshed and murder. In 1851, the United States government created Fort Defiance, an army base where the Navajos lived in Arizona. Over the decade, they prevented themselves from eviction by signing multiple treaties, allowing more presence until they no longer recognized their home. In 1860, they had had enough of the mistreatment which led to a plan being devised by the tribe leaders Moalito and Barbanito. In January of 1860, they sent warriors to attack Fort Defiance and won the battle by catching them off guard and raiding supplies. The army took notice of this and sent more troops down to prepare for future attacks. Come April, the tribe launched another one on the base. However, this time they were swiftly defeated, so they retreated into the mountains. The Navajo simply could not compete with an army that large, which put the war on hold for the rest of the year. 1861 came, and with it, a civil war. Soldiers working at Fort Defiance left to go fight the Confederate Army, giving the Navajo an opportunity to reclaim some of their land. They picked up the raids again and took advantage of the lack of military presence. Things were going well for them until March of 1862. The Battle of Glorita Pass was the final battle that the Fort Defiance soldiers were needed for, so they were sent back to the camp. Coming home to see the state Navajos left it in, General James Carrollton wanted to put an end to them. His resolution, a scorched earth campaign, led by Colonel Christopher Carson, where they would burn everything the Navajo earned, including their villages. He began in 1863 and went all over the area from mountains, canyons, and towns, destroying their property and possessions. They even cut off their water sources from Canyon de Chelly. They were losing members of the tribe, and resources necessary for survival were scarce, leading to their surrender. What followed after this was one of the biggest tragedies in Native American history. By 1864, all of the surviving Navajos in the area had been rounded up. Carson led these members of the tribe to the Bosque Redondo Reservation in New Mexico. There were roughly 10,000 members forced to walk 250 to 450 miles to the camp in the hot summer desert. The march lasted 18 days, where about 200 Navajos died along the way. During their imprisonment, they faced inhumane conditions. The land was dry and terrible for farming, which prohibited them from growing food. Starvation, thirst, diseases, and death were all prevalent at the camp. Another tragedy that went on was the forced assimilation. The government wanted their culture to be pushed upon them, so they were forced to learn Christianity, the English language, and American farming practices. Their culture was stripped away from them over the years they were there. However, pictures of the camp's conditions spread to the central government, which made Carson decide to end the arrival of any more prisoners. In 1868, the tribe and government came up with a treaty to end their imprisonment at the reservation. The Navajo Treaty of 1868 was signed by 29 Navajo leaders and 10 Army officers. The act recognized the Navajo as an official sovereignty and allowed them to return to their ancestral homes across Arizona. Unfortunately, it was not as fair as it sounds. To return home, the Navajo had to agree to the terms that allowed the government to build railroads, wagon roads, mail stations, military posts, or any necessity in their land. Although this was giving up some of their freedom, it was better than where they had been located, so they were eager to sign it and attempt to rebuild their culture. Over the following decades, the Navajo slowly regained their lives and way of living by staying in Arizona and the Southwest, trading with other tribes, and forming relationships with them. The animosity with them and the government had died down too. They even enlisted the tribe for help during World War II by asking them to create a language they could use to relay messages to American soldiers without being picked up by the Axis Army. The success of these Navajo code talkers was crucial to the Allies' victory, and they were later given Congressional Medals of Honor for their work. Arizona is home to the Grand Canyon, this year's Super Bowl, and the Navajo Native Americans, a group that built their roots here and, despite facing adversity the whole time, still live here today. Their impact can be seen on so many aspects of the state's culture, from agriculture to sports to architecture. Arizona may no longer be a frontier, but the Navajo's legacy will live on forever.